I want to bring it to current events. This discussion to current events, specifically the new developments in U.S. foreign policy towards global health. Right, we have the Trump administration pulled out of the World Health Organization, and the global health community had a reaction to that. The Trump administration has mostly, stopped all funding to USAID and global health and a bunch of development programs. So there's been different reactions to that, and I would love to hear your analysis of those reactions based on this framework that you're talking about.
If we take it that USAID comes as a foreign intervention, paid for, supported, championed by foreign people. And if we take it that intervention, as we both know, comes from the United States, and that a lot of the people who work within it and who serve it as academics, potentially as practitioners, are also American. So you have an ideal, to my mind, an ideal scenario to think about local and foreign in terms of gaze and pose with the reactions. There was a line of reaction in which Americans were addressing themselves to the American government about what will happen if they no longer do aid in the way that they were doing it. And it was shocking to me, and I've been beating myself up for that. I found this shocking at all, but I did. And it's the moment of confession that, Shane, did you find this so shocking? I mean, this had, the Americans. Anyway, but people would say, the risk here is that global health will no longer be done according to American values. And I was thinking, when did we agree? When we see it and we agree that American, first, that we even know what they are, because we don't know what they are. But second, that we want them, and that the global health will function according to, or that it's not good for American security or for the health of American people. So again, this that talking past that I described earlier, when the foreign talks to the foreign, right? You would almost not know that they were talking about an aid program. You think that they were talking about something else. In the way that I heard many Americans, not a few, many, and people whom I had assumed thought more deeply about the world. Now, again, this may be just the impact of your audience, again, the gaze problem, where you're trying very hard to align what you have to say to what the person who is trying to hear will understand. Maybe just be as simple as that. But the way that these things were being said, it's hard to believe that given how it was being said, that the people saying it did not believe it at some level in their hearts. That there's this greatness in what USAID was doing that applied particularly to America's greatness. This is a truth of our greatness, and let us preserve our greatness. Anyway, so there's that foreign thing going on.
So you would say that is like a foreign pose for a foreign gaze. Would you describe?
Yes.
Okay.
That's how we interpret that. There's a foreign pose for a foreign gaze kind of relationship going. But there was also a local to foreign going on. So I've heard many people from different parts of the global south speaking to against about the US government. Sometimes say what they think the US government wants to hear, which is, people are going to die. This is such a great thing for us. Don't let it go. Or being very angry at the US government, saying, how dare you, etc. And in a sense, almost by so doing, talking again past what whom I would consider to be the primary responsibility bearers, which are the people who are local, the people governing those local spaces, right? If um if USAID withdraws funding for HIV services in Nigeria, and the people I'm angry at is Trump and the US government, there's something wrong with me. I can be angry at Trump, but in a very secondary, remote sense, that my primary person who has offended me is president of Nigeria or the governor of the state
Right.
in Nigeria where I come from. So
Yeah.
there's something almost misdirected in that way and distracting in the local foreign sort of local post foreign gaze line in that sort of 2 by 2 matrix. Um, and there's also uh, a sense in which the people who are powerful in the US government will, um, I'm talking about the foreign post local gaze now, will address themselves to local people and say, it's your responsibility, sort yourself out, you know, do what you're supposed to do, etc. And my reaction to that is that keep quiet and bugger off. Um, in other words, and I say that recognizing that, look, there's this expression in the Bible about the guy who's trying to remove the speck from someone else's eye and has a log in their eye, and that's to
Sure.
remove
Sure.
log wrong. Um, you have no standing to do that. And second, a lot of the problems in the global south were made, created, and sustained by the United States, right? So you don't have a place to stand to tell me or my government that they are
Right.
corrupt. They are corrupt, but you are corrupt too. In
Sure.
fact,
Sure.
they're not corrupt without your corruption.
Yeah.
So you get that sort of local, so that foreign post local gaze thing. I also have a big problem. Um, but the local to local, which is people speaking to their own government, their own service provider, saying, why does a middle income country need to rely on the US for basic primary healthcare services? Why are you shocked? What have you been waiting for? Right? That line of argument and communication is, for me, again, goes back to the concept of ideal. Is ideal.
Ideal.
Every other thing else is secondary to that. And you may have reason to shout at anyone else. But if you're not shouting 80 times more to the people who are the primary responsibility bearers, I don't want to get what you have to say. Right. So it's been interesting to me personally to observe these different sort of configurations of articulating things in response to Trump. And I honestly, when I think it was Edmund Burke, I may be wrong now, who was asked to assess the state of the outcome of the French Revolution, and he said it was too early to tell. I'm not sure if it was Edmund Burke or if it was Burke who wrote it. Anyways, it's too early to tell what this is. To my mind, it's too early to tell. And again, this may just be the response of someone who questions himself and questions things a lot. I don't know how to. I'm not a believer. And I say that both literally and figuratively. I lost my very, very well curated Christian faith as a teenager. I've not recovered it back.
That's a topic for
I
another
can't believe in.
episode, I'm sure.
I know. I can't believe in the US government benevolence and generosity. And I can't
Right.
believe that on balance it's a good thing for the world.
Right. Um, there's I think it was Uhuru Kenyatta who, in a viral post or speech that he gave recently, was lamenting why Africans are so they're crying about this withdrawal of foreign aid, right? And asking what we think the U.S. government owes us. And he made the point that the primary concern of the U.S. government is the U.S., the American people, right? Would you say that that is like this America first? I don't know to what extent you follow American politics, but
Yeah.
would you say that this kind of America first mindset is a local pose for a local, like let's take care of ourselves first before we care so much about which is I think a reason that they've used to justify the pulling out of foreign aid. Why are we sending money overseas when we have all these homeless problems here in the U.S. Right? Would you characterize that as a local post for local gays in the U.S.?
Yes, but without sending money overseas, America will still have homeless and very poor. The reason why America has homeless and poor people is not because they send
Sure.
money.
Yeah.
It's very little overseas. So that's not the
Right.
problem. They
Right.
can lie to themselves with that that's the problem and believe it. But that's not the problem. The problem we know is a different structural, deep, historically conditioned
Mm-hmm.
things going on in the US, right? Um, of course, America has always served America.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there's nothing new there. The problem that perhaps America doesn't know how to think about clearly is that the America that is serving America is a very elite, powerful, typically white, typically male um, uh, America serving the same America, and others
Mm-hmm.
tend to follow slowly or suffer the consequences. So it's a. I don't mind if a country like the US says I want to serve myself. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's their problem, it's their responsibility. And as Yuri Kenyatta said, you know, what do they owe us? Question to ask. They owe us a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And this is where it gets complicated. Which is again for me partly why this is also difficult to talk.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, the US serves the US. The US gives aid to serve the US. Now, the way aid serves the US, we can many ways, right? Um, ultimately, the point of aid is to serve the
Oh yeah.
US.
Absolutely.
And when the US decides that they want to be served in a different way, they can pull it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the problem with aid is not um, that the US gives it or that serves the US. It is that we've understood it to be charity.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Which it is not.
which it ought not to be.
Mm-hmm.
If we are placing all this in the proper political context,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Mm-hmm.
is that you destroy countries, you destroy economies, and you have a responsibility for the people and the places and the lives you destroyed
Mm-hmm.
in different ways. And we can use the ways in which this destruction happens.
Right.
If we had a global order or system in which this is how aid is rationalized, then we're in a different world.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think the problem we in global public health have is that even that statement I've just made, right, that aid ought to be thought of in reparative terms, is controversial. And if I said it to a room of USAID or global health, American global health people, they would look at me like, is this guy crazy? And they would say, but this won't work in Washington. They won't speak, this won't speak to anyone. As if, by the way, what Trump is doing now was imagined to be workable in Washington 3 years ago. I'm saying a lot of complex. The underlying thing here is that I feel that those of us who are in global health, public health, we are not bold enough, we are not brave enough. We are not, I don't think we put ourselves in a position to construct the reality that we want to see. We don't make the arguments we
Mm-hmm.
want to make. And sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
seems to me like we are just, many of us are just like Trump. We believe we're great in the world and we're doing great in the world. And that is the rationale for what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And not that we are in service, in large part because the privilege that we enjoy derives from the dispossession and disadvantage of the people that we're serving. The
Mm-hmm.
consciousness of why we are doing what we do and I sort of hinted at this in the book for a bit, is that we are giving. And when you are giving, you are at liberty. It's colonial law again. They are very free. They want me, they need me, I'm going to do this, I'm going to serve them, I'm going to save their lives. And if they say no to me, then they've insulted me. They've not appreciated. Right? So they're all, for me, all those connections that says to me that we have not done our homework well enough and figured out the ways in which we want to talk about it. Because if we keep talking about it as charity, when it goes away, we should keep our mouths shut. There's no responsibility in charity in that sense. It's like you're just taking, or you're sure to give without a sense of responsibility for why you are giving. Because America cannot tell itself why the biggest aid spending is military and goes to Israel. It can't tell itself. So when you talk about aid, it's in the aid budget, but it's not talked about as aid. Or why a chunk of the money goes to Egypt, for example. Or why a large chunk of the money that goes to countries go to militaries. Or is spent by DOD, Department of Defense in the US. So there are these things that we have accepted over time, us global health people, public health people, that the normal way of doing things. And again, when that acceptance comes to bite us, we throw our hands up, and we are not re-examining. But why? Why did we allow and accept these narratives about the work that we do? That again, if we were to drill deeper and deeper, we can see that it's not a true narrative, or ought not to be true, knowing how the world works.
And it seems as though, it's all about narratives, and those narratives, the narrative about USAID has changed over the past couple of decades because when I believe it's John F. Kennedy who founded USAID, it's quite explicit. He did not describe it as aid, right? This was during the times when there was this Cold War and the fight over ideas between communism and capitalism and the perceptions of Americans overseas was kind of seen as the ugly American, the ugly kind of diplomat. And John F. Kennedy saw USAID as a way of reshaping the way people saw Americans overseas. It had very little to do with aid itself. Like I would actually, what we see global health, what many in who do practice global health perceive it to be doing, right? John F. Kennedy was very explicit in why he was creating USAID, right? But somehow over the decades, that has been we've changed that narrative, right? So there's a lot that we can analyze and about what is happening now.
Just a second there, and it will be useful for us to imagine to explain to ourselves why we changed the narrative.
Why the narrative changed?
Because again, we want to feel good. And it's hard for someone who works for the US government to, go overseas and with the intent in their head that I'm going to improve the image of America. It's harder to do that, but it's easier to say I'm going to provide needed aid and service to suffering people of the world.
Colonial love.
Now, there is that. There's also, again, the ways in which we manage to convince ourselves, even if the politicians are not saying that. Of course, they too started to say that. Sure. Is important.